This episode is about the first Roumanian congregation on Chicago's Old West Side. It was located on the north side of the Douglas Boulevard area on the 3600 West Block. As one can see, the Jewish vestiges of the upper portion of the building still are there. There's the two Ten Commandment tablets near the top and Jewish stars still on the stained glass windows. Here's a fuller view of the building as it exists now, a Baptist church, with the congregation very respectful of its past history. The congregation was established in 1897. It was also known as Sharei Shemaim. More about that a little later on. It moved to a new, spacious home at 499 South Union Street in September of 1905. In 1909, the street numbers were redone and 499 became 1352. So basically, it was near the corner of Union Street or Union Avenue and 14th Street. The building shown here is that building which was torn down around 2014. The structure had started out in 1869 as a church facility and it was converted in 1875 to a public school. If you try to look for any vestiges now, you will see a brand new structure. The spiritual leader at the time of its move in 1905 here was Rabbi Brody. It moved to Douglas Boulevard when it put up this structure in 1921. Queen Marie of the Netherlands and Romania visited the United States and Chicago. She took the time out for diplomatic purposes to stop at the first Roumanian Hebrew congregation. A couple of months later, in January of 1927, Judge Joseph B. David, as shown here, spoke at the Covenant Club and lambasted those he felt were caught up in the hoopla of the respect shown to the Queen. He reminded everyone that Romania was one of the worst anti-Semitic countries in Europe, and no reason to give kavod or respect and pander to their royalty. Regardless, a relationship ensued with the synagogue and local attaché from the Romanian government. Almost 2.5 years later, in April of 1929, the Consul General of Romania in Chicago was invited to speak at a synagogue meeting during the week in which its financial affairs would also be discussed. The Romanian consul was there to drum up business between American businessmen and Romania on the occasion of its 10th anniversary of that government. The event began around 8:30 at night. Shortly afterwards, a scuffle was heard near the front entrance. The congregants turned and noticed that the usher, who was the past president of the congregation, was being pushed forward about by 5 brigands. The bandits ordered the congregants to stand next to a wall in single file. The robbers proceeded to take more than $75,000 in cash and jewelry, but they did return money back to the rabbi once they looked at his identity card and his wallet. They overlooked the fact that the synagogue had $23,000 in cash in its safe and didn't think to ask to look at the safe. Shul, or synagogue secretary, thought that she recognized one of the bandits but kept quiet about it. The victims were asked to look at mugshots of known criminals in the area by the police. They recognized a couple of them, one of them being Morris Goldman, the ringleader. Another was Joseph Rossman, 24 years old, who lived nearby. Yes, all 5 were Jewish bootleggers, our gang. The police broadcast that $7,000 had been taken. This ruse caused a bit of acrimony between the participants. Some began to think that their partners were holding out on them. In fact, Rossman had tried to ambush Julius Becker, who held on to the money. Rossman was arrested, let out on bail, and on his way to a court hearing was gunned down in front of a restaurant on the 800 block of Maxwell Street. Morris Goldman, age 21, was convicted after 2 trials for being involved in the robbery. He could either receive a minimum of 1 year or a maximum of life, depending on the leniency of the judge. In December 1941, after the Pearl Harbor bombing and United States government declaration of war, the First Roumanian congregation changed its name to its Hebrew one, Shari Shemaim, never again referring publicly to the First Romanian congregation. Romania was under the Nazi umbrella of the Axis powers, which included Italy and Japan as well. In May of 1947, the congregation on Douglas Boulevard finished remodeling its facility. They were unaware that within a few short years, the neighborhood would turn over and the Jewish population would no longer be there. Rabbi Harry Goldstein mentioned in a magazine article how his shul was proud to still serve the Jewish public with daily services in the North Lawndale area in the early 1950s. This despite the closing of other synagogue operations that either disbanded or moved north. Within a year, First Roumanian would do likewise. In October of 1961, despite no longer having an active congregation for 7 years, the assets of the First Romanian congregation were being retained for dispensing to charitable causes. The organization announced the doling out the $12,500 to various charities in honor of its past president, Morris Luftig. Money was handed over to the Convalescent Home, the Northwest Home for the Aged, and the Loop Synagogue, of which the congregation had already transferred many of its physical properties, including memorial boards. An abrupt ending to a proud synagogue. More synagogue stories coming up. See you real soon.